Okay, so the second topic for data interpretation is population. Let's have a look. What do we got? Yeah, so we start with the Ehrlichs, which I think means honest in German, doesn't it? Um, Paul and Anne Ehrlich. There's another sort of male-female thing here, because on the cover of the book it seems to just say Paul Ehrlich, but I don't know. Um, They are US biologists, ecologists, famous for their book, The Population Bomb, which you can also download and read here. And of course, oh no, let's carry on. The following is an extract from the prologue to the book. The battle to feed all of humanity is over. In the 1970s and 1980s, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death in spite of any crash programs embarked upon now. Nothing could be more misleading to our children than our present affluent society. They will inherit a totally different world, a world in which the standards, politics, and economics of the past decade are dead. We are today involved in the events leading to famine and eco-catastrophe. Tomorrow we may be destroyed by them. Okay, so this was the Ehrlich's take on what they saw happening up to 1968. The Ehrlichs treat the birth rate as something that will only change through what sorry, it's a little bit confusing because on the book it just says it's by Paul Ehrlich, but in other sources it says they wrote it together, so sorry, I don't know. Through what he calls population control. Is this true? Okay. What we learned earlier about the birth rate? Was the evidence about what really controls the birth rate available in the late 60s? Second question, is it obvious that famine is actually caused fundamentally by a lack of food? See, for instance, the work of Amartya Sen, Nobel Prize winner in economics, Poverty and Famines. Okay, fundamentally, if I'm starving, if I'm dying from a lack of food in the modern world, is that because I haven't grown enough food, or is it for some other reason? Well, I don't grow any food, right? I tried with my daughter a long time ago, but she wasn't interested. But I don't starve, right? Have a look at Amartya Sen. Okay, so that's the one side of the debate. A very sort of, yeah, it's a very famous book at the time and still influential. Well, yeah. Here's another side, which is Julian Simon, who was a US professor of business administration. Again, we can think about the grid group scheme and put the Ehrlichs in one place and Simon in another, perhaps. He had a very different view. See, for instance, his book, The Ultimate Resource. Page 2. Is there a natural resource problem now? Certainly, just as always. The problem is that natural resources are scarce, in the sense that it costs us labor and capital to get them. We would prefer to get them for free. Are we now in crisis and entering an age of scarcity? You can see anything you like in a crystal ball, but almost without exception, the relevant data suggest precisely the opposite. The appropriate measures of scarcity all suggest that natural resources have been becoming less scarce over the long run, right up to the present. Okay, so that is Simon's views. Was it true in 1981 that data suggested declining scarcity for non-renewable resources, for food, for land? Well, have a look at some data, okay? You can look at USGS data, you can look at this data that, is he called David Jacks has put together. You can also have a look at a kind of fun topic, the Simon Ehrlich wager. They had a bet, these two, Julian Simon and Paul Ehrlich had a bet about natural resource prices, non-renewable natural resource prices. What was the mechanism Simon cited to explain why commodities got less scarce over time rather than more? Okay, how did he claim that worked? Here's another quote. The real population problem is not that there are too many people. The problem is that others must support each additional person before that person contributes in turn to the well-being of others. Okay, so I don't know. Yeah, he's sort of saying, look, when people are born, there's like 20 years when we have to support them before they start giving anything back. Okay. Which is more weighty, the burden of the first 20 years or the boon of the subsequent period? So he's sort of denying really that there's any element, any sort of aspect where extra people take more resources. That depends on the economic conditions and institutions, but also to a startling degree the decision about whether the overall effect of a child or migrant is positive or negative depends on the values of whoever is making the judgment. Your preference to spend $1 now rather than to wait for $1 plus something in 20 or 30 years. Your preferences for having more or fewer wild animals alive as opposed to more or fewer human beings alive, and so on. Okay, so at the end here he does concede that there is a trade-off between humans and other species, at least. Simon claims that population growth boosts the growth rate of per capita GDP. Is there support for this idea in economic theory? Is there evidence? Okay, theory and evidence. Does population growth boost the growth rate of per capita GDP? Okay, so that's some things to think about on population, the second topic, and I'll stop there. If I can find the stop button.